please feel free to raise your hand and ask questions, and hopefully we'll cover most of your questions as we go through. But Sarah and Ron and Justin and I were in Bangladesh the end of January. We were there for about a week. Actually, we were gone for about a week, and we took the long way there. We took 42 hours to get there and 41 and a half to get back. And there are flights that are shorter, but it was fun. And we had an opportunity to go visit where we're going to go back in April. So tonight, just to let you know kind of what we're doing, we're going to go really briefly over Hope Worldwide Utah, and then more about the refugee crisis in Myanmar, what's happening in Bangladesh, and then what you can expect from the trip. And all of the pictures that you'll see on here are pictures that one of us took during this trip. So Hope Worldwide's mission is to bring hope and love to underprivileged and vulnerable individuals worldwide through humanitarian work. We specifically focus on refugees and orphan children, and really have a passion for it, as I think most people who get involved in this work do. Welcome, come on in. So this is our team. You can see there's quite a few of us. Jonathan, that's got to be the best picture ever, right? One that I'm not going to ever take, but you can see we've got a lot of really great people who are working with this, so feel free to reach out. So a little bit about where we volunteer. There are locations in Turkey, and these are from recent trips. So we've gone to Greece, and my husband and I went to Greece last April with this organization, and then to Turkey, to an orphanage in Belize, and then to Bangladesh. So a little bit about Bangladesh. I'm going to show you a little short video that Justin put together about our time there, and I think that'll give you a little bit of the flavor. Oops, hold on. Okay, how did I do this wrong?
Just the
So I want to talk to you a little bit about the crisis and why there's such a need right now. So there are political issues behind the crisis right now, but they're not brand new. They've been going on for sometimes generations. At least back into the 1960s, there were people who started to campaign against the Ruhingya who were there, and if I get elected, I'm going to do this, X, Y, Z. So over the last several decades, they've had rights stripped away from them. They can't get birth certificates for their kids. They couldn't get marriage certificates. They couldn't go to school. They couldn't get medical care, even though their neighbors could. So we know that at least 288 Ruhingya villages have been destroyed in 2017 by fire. And the way we know this is from satellite imagery. And the reason it had to be satellites is because they have locked the borders down and they're not letting anybody in. There's no aid organizations. They kicked out Doctors Without Borders and Amnesty International. They've kicked them all out. They've kicked all the journalists out. In fact, I understand there's 2 journalists in jail right now in Myanmar for trying to report on what was going on. But with the satellite imagery, they're able to see, here's a village that's been completely razed, right? There's nothing left. Come on in. Nothing left of the village, and then the neighboring village was left intact. So the people who are coming across are bringing stories, and we talked to several of them, bringing stories of genocide, of fires, of mass rape, of execution, both with machine gun and with machetes. It's been pretty brutal. And we've had at least somewhere in the neighborhood of 650 to 700,000 refugees come across in 6 months, so since last August. There were already some refugees in Bangladesh, but the numbers that have flooded across just in the last 6 months is really quite overwhelming. So you can see the size of the circle for each 100,000 refugees, and Kutupalong is one of the big camps, but there's a number in the area where we're going to be working, close to Cox's Bazar. This is a drone shot, so thank you, Justin, for the drone. But this kind of gives you an idea. It's on the outskirts of one of the camps, and you can look and you can see that the shelters start to just spread, and they get closer and closer together the more you get into kind of the middle of the camp. But these shelters are made of bamboo and plastic tarp. So it's not, there's no floor, right? It's dirt floor. It's, I think they're fairly flimsy bamboo sides, and then plastic tarp. We were there during the dry season. The rainy season is coming, and you'll see some of the pictures where we walked, but you could see maybe 2 where we were going up and down hills. It's very dry right now, but it will become very slick and very steep with the rains. That water is that color. And those little boys are taking a bath in it. And then they cook with wood, and so they're going out every day to collect wood from neighboring hills and bring it back in for their cooking purposes. So as you can imagine, the hills now are becoming at much higher risk for landslides, mudslides. I just want to tell you a little bit about some of these people. So this is a grandma that we met, and she's 85 years old. Her eyes are mostly milky from cataracts, and she and her 50-year-old daughter are the only 2 survivors left in their family, and it took them 2 months to cross the border. So the distance is not, that far in miles, but she cannot walk. She cannot stand up straight anymore. She can squat, and if she tries to stand up, she's very bent. But she had to wait for strangers who would be willing to carry her in a basket. So it took them 2 months to get across the border. And then you had a couple of little kids who were anxious to see us, and then that mom who wanted to show off her baby. And her baby has no diapers, and that was a very common sight. So the babies run around either all the way naked or half naked, and they just go to the bathroom in the dirt, wherever they are. So religious life is also central. They're one of the first buildings that they'll build when they come across in the little community where they're put is a mosque. And this is inside a mosque as they're starting to do religious instruction with their kids that day. So they had young girls and young boys, and as the girls get older, then they're separated, but they were there. like that little girl in the corner. And then we were the only, I think, white people that some of these kids had ever seen, so we were a little bit scary. And pretty much every Caucasian person that we saw was an aid worker while we were there. Okay, so was there a question? No. Okay, so this is just some of the a picture of the camp, and then a couple of the men that we met that shared their stories with us about fleeing Myanmar. So in the top one, he's a young man. He has an 18-month-old son and a wife, and he was shot in the shoulder. So you can kind of see the scarring that was left, but he was not able to get medical care. And so he actually has no use in that arm. He cannot lift his arm above his head, and he probably never will be able to again. And the man on the bottom, you saw him in the video a little bit trying to describe what had happened. So he and his wife had 8 children, and some of them were fairly young, and he had to scoop up 2 of his kids and run down the hill, and then he's showing us how machine guns were shooting at him while he was running. And he got shot in the arm, and he got shot in the chest, but he survived and his kids survived and made it into Bangladesh. So one of the projects that we got to do while we were there in January, and that we'll do again in April, is feeding refugees in the camps, feeding them a hot meal. So we fed about 1,000 people. It's about 1,100 boxes that we did. And our little team helped pack the boxes and then distribute them. But they started cooking about 7 o'clock the night before. We left at 5:30 in the morning to get there and start packing them into boxes, and then it actually was more like a lunch meal. So does anybody want to guess how many chickens does it take to feed 1,000 people? A smallish piece of chicken.
50.
More than 50. Less than 250. It was about 120. And they don't just get to go to the grocery store and buy a pack of chicken, right? So they started from the butcher. They were missing their head, but that was it. So they had to do the skinning, the plucking, the chopping, the cooking. And they did that all night. Pounds of rice. How many pounds of rice do you think it takes to feed that many? Uncooked.
200.
It's about 350, okay, uncooked. So they had pots that looked like they could cook a person. And they worked all night. And so one of the things that we got to do was not only put the chicken in on top of the rice, and we had to put stickers on so that they knew which aid organization. But then we got to distribute. And down in that bottom corner, the military is there, and their presence is to help maintain order. And the people that we talked to were grateful for the military presence. So they were able, you see in his hands, he's holding some papers, but everybody has an identification sheet, basically, and a ration sheet, so they can mark on them. If they went through the food line, nobody's going to go back and double dip because they turn over those cards. So it's one way of helping to keep things going kind of in an orderly fashion. Imagine 800,000 people in this small area in 6 months, and it could be chaotic, but it actually is pretty well under control. So there's Sarah and Ron with rice boxes. Those are the ration cards, and then this is one of my little buddies coming to get food. So not everybody is eligible for hot meals, what they call hot meals. So anybody want to guess who does or who does not get in line for a hot meal?
Elderly and kids first.
Elderly and kids, yep. Women who are pregnant or nursing. Okay.
No young males.
No young males. What else? The sick or disabled. Okay, so you pretty much hit them all. And that's how they go through the list. And this was 1,000 or about 1,100. We hope when we go in April we'll be doing 2,500, but that's still a drop in the bucket. So the World Food Program is there. They're feeding 25,000 a day. And if they were to go through and everybody, which is not the case, but if everybody were to get one meal, it would be 42 days before you get your next one.
Jeez.
Okay. So there is also dry food distribution that happens. But the dry food distribution is rice and lentils and a little bit of cooking oil. And that's it. Okay. Water, as you might imagine, it's life. It's essential. Let me see if I can get this to play. This is actually a video. It's only a few seconds. These are some of the wells with the organization that we've partnered with. It's called Amal, and they're based in the UK, but they have a program. They do have a program in Turkey, and they have one in Bangladesh. You can see up there, they use it for bathing, they use it for cooking, they use it for cleaning. But some of these wells are very, very deep. So you have to go up the hills, and then they're digging down 850 to 900 feet. There's no machines that do that for you, right? It's hand powered. And for reference, that picture of the drone shot is about 800 feet, right? Just about 800 feet off the ground. So it's that distance into the ground to get down into clean water. Most of the places that we saw, the latrine areas were separated from the water by a fair distance, but there were some where I saw raw sewage just coming out the back of the latrine into the water, right? That was kind of running along the edge of the camp. That will only get worse during rainy season. Okay, so do you have any questions about that part? Okay, so trip information, May 6th through the 16th is what we have planned right now. That's leaving here May 6th and leaving there May 16th.
Sorry, April.
April,
Sorry.
I don't know why that's,
okay.
yeah.
April.
It's April.
This is totally April.
And it's April 8th, actually. So I guess that's what happens when you copy. There it is on the right days. So let's just go back. So it's actually April 8th, but you could choose to leave April 7th. I did find some flights that leave like 11 p.m. from the airport, so it's almost the 8th, but you can do an overnighter depending on which route you choose to take. So there's the cost is $1,200 plus the airfare, and that covers your basically everything in country except for your souvenirs. Lodging, rental cars, gas, snacks, your mandatory background check, t-shirt, etc. So in Cox's Bazar and in Dhaka, the way the trip looks like it's going to work is we'll have one night in Dhaka to kind of get adjusted a little bit to the time because the flights land late, and then leave the next day to go down to Cox's Bazar. And then you can expect down at Cox's Bazar, there's air conditioning in the rooms, there's Wi-Fi, and you'll be sharing a room. Okay, so we're not sleeping in the dirt. It's decent. Water, you want to drink bottled water, okay? And there were times in restaurants where the water had looked like it had been refilled from the tap. So like, you know how you twist a water bottle, it makes a little sound? There was no little sound. So just be aware. And we'll have plenty of bottled water as well. And then the outlets are $220, and then just what the CDC recommends for vaccinations, just your normal regular vaccinations, plus Hep A and typhoid is what they recommend. Okay, questions? Okay. Okay, there's the right dates. So either leave late on the 7th or the 8th. And again, if you want to pick airfare that goes a different route, you want to spend a couple of days in LA and then fly from there, that's totally up to you. But it's getting into Dhaka by the evening of April 9th. Spend the night in Dhaka, and then on April 10th, we'll travel to Cox's Bazar. It's a short flight, it's less than an hour. Have an orientation to the projects, and then start working on the projects there. So the projects that you can expect to be involved with in April are packing and distributing those meals, also helping to build a school. So Hope Worldwide Utah is sponsoring a school from the ground up. So they're going to have stuff for us to actually physically do on building that school. And then, of course, talking with people, visiting with kids, playing with kids, and water projects. And then at the end of the trip, an opportunity to spend a day, day and a half doing some sightseeing, and then on April 16th, start your journey back home. So on the flights, there's everything from, the shortest flight I could find was 25 hours from Salt Lake. And of course, it's not just one flight, right? But that's the shortest I could find, up to more than 72 hours. But the price difference is not that great. So about 42 hours, 48 hours, you can find prices for just under $1,000 right now, 900 maybe. But for 28 hours or 25 hours, prices run $1,100 to about $1,300. So you're kind of in that neighborhood for airfare. And then the visa process, and that comes, I think on the next slide. But the visa process, you have two options in Bangladesh. You can get a visa on arrival, 50 bucks. It's good for 30 days and it's a one-use only visa. Or if you have your passport and you can send it off right now to the LA consulate, you can pay $160 and get up to a 5-year visa, multiple entry, 30 days at a time. So that's what we did. And Sarah and I found out our passports expire in less than 5 years, and so our visas expire in less than 5 years. So our visas expire 3 months before our passports expire. So that's an option for you as well. Yes?
I did the visa on arrival, so it's 50 bucks plus tax.
Okay.
So it's like maybe 55 or something, so you gotta be prepared for that.
Okay.
But I also arrived like super early in the morning, and it was a little bit of a joke to get through there, so people aren't very helpful at all. So just keep that in mind, but yeah, there's tax on it though.
Okay, so tax, and they take cash, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so if this trip is interesting to you, or you know you've got to go, we're asking for a $400 deposit to hold your place, and then the rest of the fees to be paid by April 1st. Typically, we ask for them to be paid a month in advance, but because this trip is in a month, we're giving you till April 1st to pay those. And then we want you to fill out a volunteer form online. If you haven't already had a background check done through Hope Worldwide Utah, that will happen. You want to purchase airfare and decide what you're going to do for your visa. And then please, if you're not already on our Facebook page, follow the Facebook page. We have a general Facebook group, and we also will have a trip-specific group that we'll put you in. We can answer any questions and basically let you know what's going on, where we're going to be, and how things are going. That's a real ship, still being used. And do you have any questions? The refugee camps, and even the rice paddies that you saw us kind of walking across, those are not theirs. Those are other people's. Those are the locals' rice paddies. So it is difficult, and that's one of the problems in refugee camps is boredom. There's not enough for them to do.
Right. Gardens and such?
Yeah, they can grow them, and I think I mean, we saw several people starting stuff in January, so right by the latrines, they were growing pumpkins and stuff, so they will try and grow.
And they're growing little chickens.
And they were growing little chickens, not enough to feed 1 million people, but they are growing there's lots of little chicks running around. So they can do that, but it's hard. Yeah, it's harder. Yeah.
Can you tell us more or less how many people you're planning on taking?
Yeah, we're hoping for somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 people, so we expect it to be kind of a small group this first expedition over, but we're open to more if more are interested. And then we're planning another trip in the fall as well. Yes.
Another one. What are the relations between the locals and the refugees? Are there clashes there? Or?
Excuse me. You know, it's really interesting we asked that question. And it's been pretty amazing from my American perspective to see how welcoming the Bangladeshi people are. So we asked how much do the locals make, right? And it's most of them are making $1 a day, which is extreme poverty. I mean, if they have a job, it's $1 a day, so they're not making any money. And their middle class is making about $10 a day. And yet you have all these people coming across and they're opening their homes, they're opening their fields. I read an article just this last week, within the last couple of days. In fact, I think I posted it yesterday on Facebook on my page, about a young farmer who said, I have room on my farm and I'm gonna let people stay here because my goodness, I can't believe that they have so little. And so he opened his farmland and he's letting hundreds of families stay there. The sad part is they cut down 250 fruit-bearing trees to make room for the tents, but he literally has opened his farm and said, just come on in, I'll take you. So it's amazing, yeah. is that, do you guys agree that there,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, there's not animosity that we saw? Okay, what else? Questions? It was more than a tent. I mean, it was quite a large organization, but it was miles outside of where we parked the car and then had to walk 45 minutes, hike 45 minutes up into the village where if you had a medical emergency or you have a mom in labor, she's not going to be able to make it down to the road, find somebody who might give her transportation or not, because the refugees don't have transportation, to maybe get her to medical care. So they're having their babies in their huts, and hopefully there's somebody within their community that has experience with delivering babies. But there's, I mean, the big players are there, but the problem is really, really big. Okay, anything else? Okay, yes.
Have you been partnering with other companies to try and bring extra supplies in? I mean,
We're partnering right now with the Mall Foundation, and
I don't
so
know what that is.
they're just a small nonprofit that's been in existence about the same amount of time as Hope Worldwide, based in the UK. The person who started it is Bangladeshi, and so they have a program there in Bangladesh, even though they also have one in Turkey as well. And then, do you want to answer that, Sarah, more?
Well, and you were asking more specifically about bringing extra donations into Bangladesh. Bangladesh is so poor and things are so cheap there that for the most part it's best to buy things in country. We can buy things for pennies on the dollar there in country. And it's a little bit harder to bring. It's so much harder actually than anybody would ever imagine to bring stuff into other countries in large quantities, regardless of whether it's Bangladesh or Turkey or Greece or other countries that we work in. So there are things that we are gathering that they can't get in country, or that's difficult for them to get in country, but it's also difficult for us to even get stuff on planes over there. So we're really only taking minimal items that we need to in country.
What's your water supply like?
In country, what their water supply like?
Yeah, is it, they have a mechanism for cleaning their water so it's potable?
Just in general. So like if you go to a restaurant, no, you shouldn't drink the water. Or at the hotel or things like that. In the
Of course, but I'm
refugee
talking about
camps.
them, like,
Sure. So in the refugee camps, you've had somewhere in the area of 1 million people that all of a sudden came into an area that doesn't have water. And so that is one of their biggest crises, is that they do not have access to clean water. It's why you see children bathing in slimy green water. And so it's one of their top needs, is access to clean water, because they not only bathe in that, but they will drink it.
I've got another question coming from Martha. She's wondering, the school that we're planning on building, is it gonna start in April or the next trip later in the fall?
Do you mean the actual education part?
Like
Or the
construction?
building? The construction's gonna be in April,
Okay.
yeah.
The construction actually is starting next week.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
they will work on it when they get there, but it will actually start this next week.
But they're saving some for us.
And got another comer coming in from Facebook Live, and I wondered if you could just kind of go over the cost real quick.
Yeah, so $1,200 plus airfare is the basic cost, and airfare is running right now $1,100 to $1,300 for a trip that's 30 hours or less. And there's multiple options to get there. There's multiple airlines. So China Southern is one option, so is Qatar Air.
Okay, and now we got another question from Holly. She's wondering, how many students will the school be able to serve?
Do you wanna
40,
answer
so at least 40.
that? At least 40?
And is there anything that the locals can do to raise money for the camps? Are the teachers gonna be coming from the locals, or somebody coming in from like Bangladesh?
To teach at the school,
Yeah, once
we
it's
are hiring
finished.
a teacher from Bangladesh.
From Cox's Bazaar though, right? I mean,
Yes.
That's what you mean, yeah,
Okay, gotcha.
yeah, to teach the refugee children, yeah. Is that?
Yeah, that makes sense. I just wasn't sure if it'd be like a refugee who maybe was possibly a teacher before they came over, or if somebody's gonna have to take that long ride.
Yeah.
It was literally like almost an hour shuttle ride just to get down to the camps every day.
Yeah, you know what's different, and I think Ron will talk about this when he talks about Turkey, the educational level, professional level of Syrian refugees is very, very different from the Rohingya refugees. They were agricultural workers, most of them are illiterate, or functionally illiterate, and they had no opportunity for education or schooling, so finding one that had a background in teaching or education at any level would probably be quite difficult. but certainly it's an option to look at, but right now we're planning on Cox's Bazar.
Maybe for people who are out there who are wondering how they could help besides going, what, is there a venue that they could?
Yeah, sure. So Hope Worldwide Utah always takes donations, so financial donations are great. One of the things that we do want to look at taking over are water purification tablets, and they go so far, but that's something that's useful and helpful. I think the opportunity, me personally, I think the opportunity to share information about what's going on is really helpful. So opportunities to speak to groups, we're happy to go and talk to church groups, to school groups, professional groups, and take the time to share kind of the experience over there. I mean, one of the things that's different, I think, with these refugees in this situation is that you don't see a whole lot of news stories about this in the U.S. So Google alerts are great, and I have them out, and I get news stories every day. But 90% of the stories are international stories, international news sources. The New York Times publishes fairly often, but they're the only big player. Sometimes CNN will do a story, but it doesn't trickle down. Like, I don't read about it in the Trib, I don't read about it in the Deseret News, I don't see it on KSL. It's like too distant almost. And Syria sometimes gets more, with the bombing of Aleppo and stuff, and then Alan Kurd, the little 3-year-old who ended up on a beach, drowned. That really captured kind of the world's imagination, and there's more stories about what's going on there. But Bangladesh is still kind of out of the news, and it's the stories of what's happening to the refugees as they come across, the genocide that is happening to them is really horrific. And the fact that news stories aren't getting out, I think is problematic, right? And I think that's one of the things that people can do to help, is help spread the word by helping, people know about what the problem is and how they can help.
I saw my first article on it today in the news.
Yeah, see, it's.
Can you describe the differences between these refugee camps compared to any of the other ones that you guys have visited in the world?
So I've been, and Ron and Sarah and everybody else who's had an opportunity to see refugee camps, I mean, there's variation, of course, but I have seen extreme poverty on multiple continents, including Africa and Bangladesh. These refugee camps are the hardest ones I've seen. So they have the least, they have the most people, the conditions are harsher there than ones I have ever seen before. But the people are gracious, and they're kind, and they're welcoming, and they're polite, and they want to share their story. But yeah, they're pretty rough.
So thank you so much. And the only thing that I would end with is that if you guys are interested in the Bangladesh trip, we will, and you're interested in going on that, we will actually send you a volunteer packet, a full volunteer packet. It's more like 10 pages long. And it has all this info, just even in more detail. It has a packing list, so we really guide you through the process. And so there's a lot more information. This is just an abbreviated version to help you guys get a feel for what's happening. There will be a lot of interaction afterwards if you want to ask any of us questions. But there'll be additional information if you're interested in coming on the trip.
Okay, thank you.